we've showed you Pramila Jayapal is as big a lying, bullshitting politician as there is, and she's the head of the Progressive Caucus, which means she's the biggest sellout right now in Congress. She's the biggest one. Pramila Jayapal, she's a bigger sellout than Nancy Pelosi. How could you be? Because Nancy Pelosi doesn't pretend she's the head of the Progressive Caucus. She's a corporatist, and so is she. So she's said that Joe Biden's she gives him an A+. He's doing a great. So she's just the biggest lying tool possible for the establishment. That's who she is. She endorsed Nina Turner's opponent, who is a corporatist, over Nina Turner. Nina Turner likes her, hates me. That shows you how fucked up Nina Turner and anybody who wants to be a Democrat is. She endorsed her corporate opponent. I endorsed Nina Turner. Nina Turner called me anti-black. Okay. Which is the new buzzword because they've ruined racism. They called you a racist. No one pays attention to it. So now they're coming out with anti-black, and that's what they're trying to do. But anyway, I've always given the president credit for coming in with a vision that was big, bold, populist. He didn't do that. What? So I've always lied and given the president credit for being a big, bold populist and being willing to fight for it. Those are two lies.
Was that the populist
in one sentence?
To have a much bigger IRS,
right? His promise was to hire 87,000 more IRS. I would argue that the Progressive Caucus was probably his best friend. I would agree with you.
Yeah, they couldn't have done it without you.
Yeah. So here's what she says.
I've always given the president credit for coming in with a vision that was big, bold, populist, and being willing to fight for it. And I would argue that the Progressive Caucus was probably his best friend on Capitol Hill in terms of
I would argue that too. Just like you are now.
Selling this to the country, pushing for it, making sure we got legislation drafted and passed in the House. Many of those pieces that are in the Inflation Reduction Act came directly from the piece of legislation we drafted in the House. And as for Senator Manchin, I think it's a great thing that he was able to get to a place.
She loves Joe Manchin too. She loves everybody. The Democrats. I love the Democrats. I'm not fighting back against the Democratic establishment. I am the Democratic establishment. Way to go.
Where he could be comfortable with moving some of these critical issues along and that he didn't give up. I give him a lot of credit for that.
She loves him.
And I'm happy to have him in the Democratic.
She loves him. She's just the nicest lady.
She doesn't have anything nice to say about Kristen Sinema? Come on.
Come on.
Get that insulin up.
They're always fighting for something, but never actually doing anything about it. That's because you need to send them more money and vote for them even more harder. They're so close. Just keep giving them money.
With your seed money.
Revolutionary Blackout Network says Pramila Jayapal on the IRA. Voters are looking at what we're doing on climate change, and they're not expecting to turn this around by tomorrow. They're expecting the U.S. to take leadership and taking on climate change, fighting for climate justice. Well, let's listen to her say it.
Voters are looking at what we're doing on climate change, and they're not expecting to turn this around by tomorrow. They are expecting...
Or they're not looking to turn it around at all. Not by tomorrow or ever.
By tomorrow. They are expecting the United States to take leadership on taking on climate change, fighting for climate justice, and this bill is going to get that done. That's going to energize, millions of young voters.
Oh, yes. They're not going to actually do anything to actually help the climate or anything, but voters are going to be energized by all the leadership. They're going to be energized by the leadership and climate justice. And they're going to need that energy too, Kurt, because they're going to need that energy to swim with when all they have to do is live underwater. And by the way, is there any more meaningless? I don't know what climate justice means.
It sounds so stupid.
It sounds. What does that mean? Climate justice. So now they're trying to mix woke politics with climate, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like saying space freedom. What does it mean?
You don't believe in space freedom?
Kurt, I'm interested in climate justice plus.
It sounds like
That's where you get to make everybody else eat bugs and you still eat meat.
Yeah,
it's called climate justice plus. So here it is. Imagine believing this. Imagine believing what she fucking said just now. Imagine believing this, saying it, and thinking you were fooling anyone. Let me listen to her say it again.
Voters are looking at what we're doing on climate change, and they're not expecting to turn this around by tomorrow. They are expecting the United States to take leadership on taking on climate change, fighting for climate justice, and this bill is going to get that done. That's going to energize, millions of young voters in particular, but a lot of voters across the country who feel like this is an issue that has been evaded and, really obscured predominantly by Republicans who refuse to believe that it's even real. So I think that while I understand we're not going to get everything right away, people aren't going to see that. They are going to see that we can get things done. And between this bill and the
and what they got done was for every windmill that they get to build, they have to also drill an oil well. So they opened up hundreds of millions of acres to oil exploration, and they did it under the idea of fighting climate change. Do you understand do you know the oil companies are happy about that bill?
They're also energized.
Yeah, yes. Do you know the oil companies are happy about the bill she's claiming credit for? At best, it's 50-50. For every one step forward they take on climate change, they take one step backwards. At best, that's what it is. But it's worse than that because this bill actually accelerates climate change. Doesn't stop it. It's all bullshit. And just like this person says, imagine believing that, saying it, and thinking you were fooling anyone. Hey, no need to argue that the Progressive Caucus was probably Biden's best friend. This much is true. Unfortunately, the Progressive Caucus is no friend of progressives. Bam! Bam! So I don't know. It's gonna be extra hard for me not to call her Jamila PayPal by mistake, because that's what she's doing. That's who she is. Hey, we're coming to Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Detroit, Los Angeles, Spokane, Tacoma, Denver. Go to JimmyDoreComedy.com for a link for all our tickets for all our live shows. See you there.